Welcome back to the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. I'm your host, Felicia Fishoff, registered psychotherapist and founder of Rooted in Resilience Psychotherapy and Wellness. And tonight, we're stepping into another powerful She Speaks conversation. Tonight's episode is titled Holding Life and Loss, a doula's story of birth, grief, and healing. Tonight, we're stepping into a conversation that holds both tenderness and truth. Because while birth is often seen as a time of joy, for many it also holds grief, loss, and uncertainty. And sometimes all of that exists at the exact same time. Tonight, I'm joined by someone whose work lives at the intersection of care, community, and compassion. Danielle James is an educator, doula, and advocate with over decades of experience supporting equity, wellness, and education. She has supported over 200 families as a birth and postpartum doula, walking alongside people through some of the most sacred and at times most difficult moments of their lives. Her work is deeply rooted in trauma informed care, reproductive justice, and creating spaces where people feel seen, supported, and empowered. Before we begin, just a gentle reminder that while we're having meaningful conversations, this show is for educational and community support purposes and is not a substitute for therapy or crisis support. If anything comes up for you while listening, take a moment, take a breath, and reach out for support if you need it. And as always, if you're listening and this conversation resonates with you, I invite you to share it with someone who might need it tonight. The chat is open, Love Bay family, so feel free to drop your thoughts, reflections, or questions. We're here with you. Danielle, welcome to the Mental Health Hour. How are you?
Hi, Felicia. I'm
Hey,
good.
girl. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it is so lovely to have you. Love Bay family, this is a real treat tonight. Danielle is just such an amazing gem, and we're in for a real treat. Danielle, I usually love to start off these episodes by asking, why does the Love Bay family need to be talking about this topic tonight?
Oh, yeah. So many reasons why,
Yeah.
but I'll just start with the short answer.
Hmm.
This topic is really important because when we think about how much we talk about the perinatal period in pregnancy and a woman's body changing and what your
Yeah.
baby is doing and how they're developing. And, we spend all this time learning about that leading
Yes.
up to our births. And we don't spend nearly, maybe not any time talking about our mental health, talking
Yes.
about our coping strategies, talking about the
Hmm.
fact that we're entering a huge transition.
Yeah.
And so we need to talk about the really real, I think,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to motherhood, especially when it comes to Black motherhood, and
Yeah.
a lot of the things that have come out of here in Canada, that have come out of COVID in terms of
Mm,
disparities, health disparities, and access to care.
yes.
So I think that, yeah, this is a conversation that, here's the thing, I'm seeing it everywhere. It's,
Yeah.
April is Black Maternal Health Week. We
Yes.
celebrated a conference, Black Maternal Health and Reproductive Justice Month,
Yes.
here in Ottawa. And, I'm seeing it all in the social media. I'm seeing it all in the feeds. Everybody's talking about this right now, about Black maternal
Hmm.
health, about Black mental health, about Black women's health. And
Yes.
so, yeah, this is why we need to be having this conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's also like great to be talking about it, especially in light of Mother's Day that is coming up.
Mhm.
I know that this, at least in Canada here, Mother's Day is this coming weekend. And I know that, this time can bring about a lot of joy and happiness, but there's
Mhm.
also sadness at times and grief in the
Yeah.
midst of it too.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Mother's Day, like many of the holidays, I think, depending on our experiences and maybe
Hmm.
losses that we've had in our lives. So
Yes.
yeah, Mother's Day can be very loaded.
Yeah.
And even even mothers who have, who are mothering and have children might also
Yeah,
be, mourning a loss as well and honoring a loss on that
absolutely.
day. So it's just kind of something to keep in mind. I know that, of
Mhm.
course, in our sort of commercialized society, you see a lot of stuff on the TV and advertising, and it's all about like mothers and mothers getting treated, but it's like that's not everyone's experience,
Yes,
of
absolutely.
motherhood. So yeah, keeping that in mind, definitely. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. And, our lovely producer at the back asked a great question. What is a doula? Who is a doula? What do they do? Who are you? What do you do? So why don't you share a little bit about what a doula does? What is the role that they play, especially as it relates to, maternal health?
sure. So I was trained through Dona International as a birth and postpartum doula.
Yeah.
And so, as a birth doula, I support couples and parents as they are starting this journey, providing childbirth education, lactation education, talking about their birth options here in the hospitals.
Mm,
So again, I'm here in the Ottawa area, and so being familiar with the hospitals here and the epidurals and the way that the different um, processes work. And so being able to
mm,
give that kind of guidance to parents as they're on that journey and as they're going to birth. When they go into birth, I will accompany them, again,
mm,
providing non-medical comfort measures. So again,
mhm.
I'm not administering epidurals. I'm not doing
Yeah.
anything clinical. Doulas don't do anything clinical, but we're very
Mhm.
familiar with all of the clinical processes. We can give information,
Yes.
and teach our clients how to advocate for themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's a big key in terms of being a birth doula. And postpartum support, that tends to be more about breastfeeding, lactation support, chest
Mhm.
feeding, whatever your feeding goals are, helping
Yes.
you to kind of gauge and figure out what your options are, helping you to achieve those goals, providing resources, again,
Yes.
education. I took training for lactation education. So again,
Mhm.
helping moms with holds and
Yes.
if they're having supply issues, helping them kind of gauge where they're at. Do they need to go and
Mhm.
see an LC? Helping to
Mhm.
refer to resources out in the community, and then just
Yep.
providing that hands-on support in the home. So whether
Yes.
it's infant care, so that mom can get a bit of sleep and take a hot shower, we do some meal prep, light cleaning, things like that to
Yes.
just again sort of support moms. Depending on the mom, though, again, other
Yes.
moms require other things. So depending on if
Yeah.
they've had a challenging birth, there might be mobility issues. And
Mm.
so, it really depends on the family and the needs of the family. But just
Mm.
being there to provide non-judgmental care,
Yeah.
support, education, and then resources that are available in the community. Mhm.
I love that. I love that. I love that because what I'm hearing is not only the advocacy piece, because I feel like we don't talk about that advocacy piece enough,
Mm.
right? But there's also it's like this feeling of creating a village around the family, right? And
Definitely.
we thrive in the village. We
Yes.
thrive in the collective.
We do, we do. And it's funny though, because in our Canadian society and a lot of our like
Yes.
sort of Western society, what do? It's like, oh yes, it takes a village. And then we send the mom off on mat leave by
Mm,
herself. Her
yeah.
partners still has to go back to work. Everybody still has to go back to work. And
Yes.
so doulas, can kind of help you bridge that gap,
Yes.
by, like I say, letting you know what resources are available, coming into the home and actually being that hands-on support that you need just to kind of get
Hmm.
you through that period and to really help you build confidence.
Yes.
It's such a vulnerable place to be as a new parent. Everyone in the
Mhm.
room is an expert except you.
Yes.
Everybody's done this before except you. Everyone's full of advice. And, I like to think that,
Yes.
doulas and different, birth workers or different people that are in your community, that space, we're trying to create that space so that, give you that information, but then create that space so you can kind of figure out what's going to work best for you and your family.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
amazing. That's so amazing. And, as you journey alongside families in our community, right? I'm sure that you've seen the highs, that you've seen the lows, that you've seen everything in between, plus some. So, where do you want to start with regards to our topic tonight? A doula story of birth, grief, and
Mm.
healing.
I think, I think the best place to start is maybe just sort of like with my own story, because that's kind of where my whole
Yeah,
journey started, was with my own experiences.
absolutely.
And I definitely, I definitely, coming through those experiences and then talking
Yeah.
about them to a friend of mine who had become a midwife. Actually,
Yes.
she was a new midwife, but she was the one who really kind of encouraged me, was sort of like,
Mhm.
you've had a lot of experiences, and
Yes.
maybe there's something here that's going to come out of it. So with
Mhm.
my son, with my first,
Yes.
everything was okay. But then
Mhm.
towards the end of my pregnancy, I was probably still a good 3 weeks out from my due date.
Yes.
I was diagnosed with preeclampsia.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I did not know at the time. So again, this is
Yes.
another one of those things about health disparities. Preeclampsia is actually more prevalent for Black women.
Mm. Mhm.
Nowhere in the research at the time, this was 17 years ago, nowhere in the
Yeah.
research and all the baby books that I read about did they ever mention that. They would
Yeah.
mention preeclampsia, but never that there was something, that would maybe make me as a Black woman more predisposed. So
Yeah.
when they said, you have to be induced, I was kind of surprised, it took me,
Mhm.
like, I was like, I've got what? Like, oh, that
Yeah.
thing? Like, I read about it in the book, but like,
Yeah.
I had had a pretty normal pregnancy up until the end. But
Yeah.
so baby was born. I had a lot of
Mhm.
challenges with breastfeeding.
Mm.
I suffered from postpartum mood disorder.
Mhm.
I will say I was never like officially diagnosed. This is
Yeah.
something that, again, in everything that I read about, they talked about
Yeah.
postpartum mood disorders. They never described the thing I had. And so I was always,
Yes.
that's not what it is. And I realize now, again,
Mhm.
in learning and in the education and the work that I do now, and having worked with clients afterwards, understanding that, yes, what I was experiencing there is sort of like, right, we don't always describe things the way it is in the textbook, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so for me, I experienced my postpartum mood swings as like a lot of like anger and frustration. Like, I was
Yeah.
sad and crying, although there was a lot of crying.
Girl, talk
But
about the thing. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, the tears at 3 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning. But,
Mhm.
for me, it was like, no, I was high functioning. I was out there. I
Mm.
was always alone with the baby. That was another thing too. I was
Mm.
very isolated. My
Yeah.
partner was always at work trying to build his career. We were
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was the winter time. Oh,
Mhm.
so all of these factors kind of
Yes.
played in, but none of that was mentioned in the books that I read, that like,
No.
yeah, that the weather could affect me this strongly and inhibit and create a barrier to getting out to connect
Yeah.
with people, right? It's like, oh, shovel off the car and get
Mhm.
all of us bundled up and get us both in the car. It was a
A
lot.
lot.
So
Yeah.
I definitely struggled in that period. And then in between, and then after that, and I, like kind of came out of it. I
Mhm.
would say that my mood sort of stabilized more after I weaned.
Mhm.
So again, I don't want to
Yeah.
postulate as to like what the connection is there, but
Yeah.
certainly, again, hormones at play. Like, I don't know, for me, it got better after that. Then we
Mm.
had a loss in between. So I have a daughter
Mm.
as well. But in
Yeah.
between we had a loss. And again, I was somebody who fell through the cracks. I was somebody who was
Mm.
missed. And so then it was like when it was dealt with, it was kind of like a bit of an emergency. It was like an
Oh,
urgent
wow.
situation.
Mhm.
Um, I, was experiencing the loss of a baby. And can I just say, like, the way that
Yeah.
we handle this in Canada, there are other countries that have
Mm.
perinatal loss or pregnancy and infant loss.
Mm. Yeah.
ways to deal with this so that the bereavement process is a little bit more compassionate. And we don't have
Yeah.
anything like that here in Canada.
Yeah.
Each hospital kind of does it the way they do it. I did sit in an ER, knowing that
Mm.
I was having and like losing a baby, having to
Yeah.
wait. I wasn't seen, so I was sent home and told to come back the next day.
Mm.
It was, yeah, like it really
Yeah.
it opened my eyes to
Yeah.
what women have to go through. And so I would hesitate to say too, I had a friend, a white friend, who
Mm-hmm.
literally had the same sort of situation as me.
Yeah.
We both had ectopic pregnancies, and
Oh.
she was treated right away and rushed into surgery. And it's like that was
Mm.
not the case with me, even though we had very similar situations. So again,
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes, it's like I didn't collapse. I was soldiering on. I was being, I
Mm.
didn't want to be too loud or like whatever in the ER. It's like I was trying to, again, trying to get good medical care, but it's like,
Yeah.
how did that play out for me? I'm not too sure. So that's something that I've,
Yeah.
sort of thought about over the time and whatnot. And then I had my rainbow baby, right? Oh, everything's
Yeah.
perfect now. You've had your rainbow baby. It's
Yeah.
like, it does not erase, it does not erase
Yeah.
loss.
No.
Although it can feel that way, it's like
Mm.
I feel like, and I want to be clear, I had loving and supportive and caring people around me at this
Yes.
time, and some people don't, some people
Mm-hmm.
are going through this without that support. So I did have
Yeah.
loving support around me at the time, but it almost felt as though it was okay to talk about the loss until I got
Yeah.
pregnant again. And then it was like, that never
Mm.
happened,
Yeah.
So that, again, sometimes it makes it like a silent grief or a silent,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not like
Absolutely.
supposed to talk about it, or you're not allowed to talk about it, or, it's a
Yeah.
sad loss for those other people as well. And so, maybe
Yeah.
that's why they don't want to talk about it, but it can be challenging, I think. And, again, going back to this thing of like, why don't we talk about mental health right at the beginning? Because
Mm.
loss is something that can happen even early on.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
you can, some people will get genetic testing and then get back, test results that, are forcing them to make, a
Yeah.
big decision. So, again, talking about
Mhm.
mental health, talking about grief, loss, coping strategies, the fact that
Yeah.
this is a huge transition, like we need to
Mm.
be doing this right away.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. So, I love that you talk about, there's the big term disenfranchised grief, right? Where, you're grieving, but you feel like you don't have, um,
space,
yeah, the
like a
space or
space.
the permission to grieve. So you want to suppress it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
then,
then you're supposed to be happy
mhm,
about the baby, right? Like now it's like you're supposed to move on or something. And yes,
yeah,
of course you're moving forward, but yeah, like
yeah,
there's still like a little quiet room somewhere where I can kind of go and just, think about like
mhm,
it was a real baby to me,
of
it was a
course,
real life. And it
of
was,
course,
for the brief time that it was within me, I felt, like I
very
mothered it,
connected. Of
and so,
course,
yeah, yeah.
of
And so
course,
every Mother's Day, that comes up for sure. I'm
absolutely,
celebrating with my children, but I'm also
yeah,
remembering, a child that I lost, that
yeah,
it might seem silly, but it was like this
mhm,
baby was a fully formed person in my mind and in my heart.
of
It's like
course,
I had already imagined,
yeah,
the big, like the sibling running around with my son, and they were
y
gonna, Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, of course.
We can't help ourselves when it's a wanted pregnancy. It's like when
Yeah,
you're trying to build your family and you get pregnant. It's like you can't
it's a
help
big
but
deal.
immediately, as soon as that stick, you see the plus
Yeah,
sign, it's like this person is just like, okay, like new
yes,
person in the family, and
they're moving in.
that's right. That's right. You're picturing them like in college. Okay, start doing the math for the childcare. Like it's
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and so when
Absolutely.
you have that loss, it's not just this little teeny tiny, like
Yeah.
fetus, it's like
Yeah.
it's the whole like life
Yeah.
that you were sort of imagining, I guess, in your mind. At least like for me,
Yeah.
it was like that. I'm a very imaginative person, and so
Yes,
yeah, like this was a fully formed person to me,
of
and
course.
it was my child, and so yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big disconnect, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's like someone is missing, right?
yeah,
Because you had all of these hopes and dreams for this little one that you didn't get to really
mhm,
spend that time with, right?
yeah,
I know that even from my own work, with clients that have had pregnancy losses, even when they do have their rainbow baby, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that because you
mhm,
want to protect. I mean, just being pregnant,
yeah,
yet you feel in control, but you don't feel in control because
yeah.
really there's only so much that you can
Oh,
actually
sure.
control,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
rainbow pregnancy for me was full of sort of like ups and downs, like, okay, the first ultrasound, okay, okay, everything's okay. Okay, then the next
Yes.
ultrasound, is everything okay? Everything's okay, everything's okay.
Yes.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't like this carefree, with my son, I kind of was carefree right until the end, when I had to be
Yeah.
released. But up until then, I had just been sort of like, okay, everything's going great. Whereas, yeah, for
Yeah.
the second time around with my daughter, each stage of the pregnancy. And this was true for my partner as well. Like I remember going
Yeah.
to that ultrasound and my husband being like,
Mm.
counting the fingers and toes and being like, what's that? Like
Yeah.
and she's like, that's just an arm. That's the umbilical cord. Like, like it's okay.
Yeah.
Like what? Because he was really
Yeah.
like suddenly, I mean, it wasn't even something that, we had talked about beforehand, but like suddenly in the moment, it's like
Yeah.
all of this anxiety came over him of like, something's going to be wrong with this baby. And, maybe we're going to lose this baby
Yeah.
too. So again, and
Yeah.
let's talk about mental health for partners, right? I mean, we don't
Yeah.
have enough
Yes,
for women.
please.
And then it's like partners
Mhm.
are just like, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
she's falling apart, like, right? It's like
Yeah.
they're at a
Absolutely.
loss.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, there's this expectation that they're supposed to be able to diagnose PPD. It's like it's their first baby
100%.
too, right? Like they don't
Yeah.
partners don't necessarily know, like, they're not equipped and they're sleep deprived and all the rest. They're going through their transition. So
Yeah.
everyone in the family is adjusting, and
Mhm.
when there's a loss or if it's not going well, with breastfeeding, or there's challenges
Mhm.
because of the birth, like these can all just kind of spin out like into the family dynamics like weeks
Yeah.
and months down the road. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I know that you mentioned it before that you had an ectopic pregnancy, and I don't know if everyone would understand what that even is and how life-threatening that is because that experience in and of itself put your life at risk, right?
Yes, yeah. And what's interesting is it's only now, it's only
Yeah.
now that I look back and realize never, not once was anybody like, do you need to talk to somebody? Like, do you think you might
Yeah.
need, like, mental health support was not offered, not even like a, here's a peer support group you can like reach out to, it's like it was
Mm,
never mentioned. The only thing that would ever be said was the very rushed sort of like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And then it would be like
y-
right into the medical stuff,
yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, I also had like an interaction on the table where I had like a bad reaction when they pulled the intubation out.
Oh, shoot.
So it's
Yeah.
just something like a muscle spasm thing, but it like I stopped breathing. So
Oh
it's
my
really
gosh.
scary.
Of
And it
course.
happened to me in recovery. So again, there was sort of, I didn't know what was happening, but all I could think was like, oh my God, I've lost the baby. And now like my son is going to, because my son, I still had a
Yeah.
toddler. My son is going to lose
Yeah.
his mom, you know?
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's like all of these things just
Mm.
happened all at once. Then I had to recover and then it was back to work, right? Like it was like
Absolutely.
I think I had a week, maybe 10 days off or whatever it was. And then it was sort of like,
Yeah.
okay, you can go back to work now. And I did, I just went back to work. And so, again, it just further, it's like even somebody who was there who saw me lose
Yes.
the baby didn't say, hey, maybe you need to speak to a mental health professional, or this is a lot to
Yeah.
process. Most
Mm.
people need to speak to someone. Is there someone you can speak to? Do you have a faith, person, a faith provider?
Yeah.
Do you have someone, in your family? Do you already have a
Yeah.
therapist? Do you have a peer support group? Like something.
Yes.
But
Mm.
I definitely it took so
Yeah.
much longer to process all of that because
Of course.
I never had a chance to, like, when it happened or sort of like immediately after it happened, and it wasn't really brought to my attention that I should address it. It was sort of
Mhm.
like, okay, once you've had a regular period, you can go back to trying. Like
Yeah.
that was kind of it, like
Yeah.
you can go back to trying to have a baby. And so again, I do feel like, this
Mm.
is something that I think, again, across the board, some kind of
Yeah.
national strategy or like guidelines or something that takes
Yeah.
into account the nature, the special nature of this medical situation, I guess,
Yeah.
when we're dealing with pregnancy loss, infants,
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of unique. And again, because you're
Yeah.
not standing there with an actual child, it's like they'll just like leave you in the waiting room while things are happening to you. And
Yeah.
so it's, and I
Mm.
don't want to say that I didn't receive compassionate care or, kindness when I was,
Yeah.
at the hospital. Again, like this, everybody's doing what, like doing the best they can. And this is what's in
Mm.
place. This is how it's done. But I
Mhm.
do think that it's, it's really important. A lot of people are unaware that sometimes if you have to have, uh, um, I'm sorry, the word is escaping me now in my brain
Uh,
fog.
it's
But
okay.
when you have to have a loss, they're going to give you
Oh,
like
the DNC? Is it the
not a
DNC?
DNC, but they'll send you home with a medication,
Mm.
because the fetus, the baby has died, and so you
Yeah.
have to pass the baby, and so they'll give you the drugs and send you home to sort of induce labor, and they just send you home with the drugs, and you just have to go
Mm.
home and like pass your child, like.
Yeah.
So, and this has happened to a loved one of mine as well, and
Yeah.
and clients, women that I've known. So,
Mm.
I think that we can do better,
Of
and
course.
and I think that if we are going to send women home to do that, when
Mm.
like, there needs to be something.
Some
Like,
support.
there needs to
Absolutely.
be a mental health follow up to that, like 100%.
Yeah.
It's not just about, oh, did your body heal? It's like,
Yes.
how are you psychologically? How are you mentally, emotionally?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And we talk a little bit about, because I know um, something that is often linked with pregnancy loss is a sense of shame or
Mm.
guilt and self blame. I know sometimes culturally women are often blamed for it, like because and have you seen that even in your own experience or in your experience as a doula? And how do you help women to move through that?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one. I would say more than anything too, that it's like women are the hardest on themselves. You're right. There is often, again, especially too, sometimes culturally,
Yeah.
stigma or shame around fertility, just fertility, right?
Yeah.
Getting pregnant, not getting pregnant, getting pregnant,
Mhm.
baby, like it's there's a lot of there's
Mm.
like there's a lot of beliefs or different values that play there, depending
Yes.
on culture. So 100%. And then of course we take it into ourselves, and then we end up being, even harder on ourselves, I think, because we've
Yeah.
internalized it. We're getting it from, maybe multiple sources.
Yeah.
I think it's really key. This is where that educating partners, educating loved ones, like educating that village, like you
Yeah.
say, about, loss. I think, again, we're often really educated on supporting our, loved one as they're having a healthy, happy baby in a normal pregnancy, but we're not
Yeah.
always given the tools to deal with our loved ones and support our loved ones if they're having to face challenges. I can
Mm.
think of, for example, sometimes we were hired by families where there'd been a really challenging birth, and
Mhm.
maybe there were medical things involved that made the family uncomfortable, or privacy issues, or emotional things, like, any number of things. So it's like they had their support network there, but it was like they still were bringing
Mhm.
in, sort of
Yes.
like someone to help, because they need, mom needed somebody who was comfortable with her medical situation as it was. And again, keeping in mind, doulas don't do anything medical, but we're
Mhm.
comfortable with, bandages, or,
Yeah.
incisions, or if there's, bruising and things like that. And so it can be really hard
Mhm.
for a loved one to see on their loved one, on the mom.
Yeah.
Then mom's having to mitigate all the emotional stuff. Oh, it's not that bad. She's having to act brave. Mom doesn't want to have to do that. Mom wants to just be able to get the support and the help, and and
Mhm.
and not have to, like be where she's at. So, um,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely, you know, yeah, that stigma, that shame, we need to be able to talk more about it. And I think that education piece is really, really important. Um, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, the more people you can
Mhm.
bring into your circle, like when you're going
Yeah.
through this transition, that can be on your side and kind of be part of this, and that you can all learn together, right? We used to
Yeah.
have moms come, so we do childbirth education as part of the service, with our clients. And a
Mhm.
lot of the time, the moms, like the grandmas, so
Mhm.
mom's mom, or, like, partner's
Yes.
mom, they'd come and sit in on the childbirth ed. And,
Yes.
I remember, sometimes they get really emotional and just be like, I didn't know this. Like, this is so much more information than they had about their own bodies, and birth and the options.
Yes.
When I gave birth, it was just like this. And, I had no
Mhm.
idea, and
Mhm.
so, again, just making sure that everybody, that's going to be around you after the baby's born is sort of like educated as to, yeah,
Yeah.
how they can support you best, with, again, modern current information, resources,
Absolutely.
everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, just, providing those resources and to the family unit is
Mhm.
something that would be super helpful, especially because, I mean, pregnancy is just
Like,
it is just all encompassing, and
yes,
everybody
yeah.
experiences it so differently.
So
And,
differently, so differently. And,
yeah,
there's, like we can learn from our moms
yeah,
and from our aunts, like we can
yeah,
learn. We need that cultural connection. We need that family connection, that ancestral connection, I think,
mm,
for especially, women of color, but just, I mean, everybody. It's like we want to, there's nothing like bringing new life into the world to kind of make you look back at where you've come from and the
yes,
people that came before you, right? And so,
yeah,
again, like learning what you can about health information, medical information.
mm,
What was your mom's postpartum period like? Did she have the blues?
mm,
Did she have issues, breastfeeding? How did she deal with them? Just
yeah,
opening up that dialogue and those conversations. And then,
Yeah.
like I say, it's like being able to kind of, it can be an opportunity to present loved ones and family members with the kind of education and information that, you'll find helpful. But
Absolutely.
but I think that also, yeah, like that ancestral, that cultural connection,
Mm,
if you can have it, it's,
mm,
it's so important, during that transition time. That
mm.
perinatal period, yeah.
Absolutely. So you are listening to the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. And tonight's conversation is one of those that reminds us that life doesn't always come in clear, separate moments of joy or grief. Sometimes we're holding both at the same time. If you're tuning in and this conversation is resonating with you, take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps us continue these important conversations and reach more people in our community. You can download the Love Bay app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and stream us anytime. Visit lovebayradio.live to listen, support, and donate. Your contributions help us continue serving you. And tonight, especially, if something is sitting with you, you don't have to hold it alone. The chat is open. Feel free to share your thoughts or reflections. You can also call in and be a part of the conversation at 437-778-3299. That's 437-778-3299. We're here with you 24/7. Yes, Danielle, this is such a powerful story. As you were sharing, I was thinking about, I'm kind of jumping on your storyline,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And you
Mm,
talked about how you weren't seen,
mm,
right? You had all of the symptoms, but you were sent home.
mm,
And I know that we were talking a little bit earlier about what like advocacy.
mm,
It's you see it in the media all the time, with regards to how we're often dismissed in the medical system, or we're not seen, we're not heard. And for someone who may know that there is something going on in their body, right? Because you knew that there was something wrong. You were
mm,
experiencing all, even though you're high. I mean, we're often high functioning, because we want to be seen, we want to be taken seriously.
mm.
But then, because we're not on the floor rolling all the time, or we're not, we
Yeah.
get overlooked. So, what does advocacy look like?
Okay. So I
Yes,
would,
girl.
yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go to school. Okay.
Let's go. Let's go.
Advocacy. What I used to teach my clients,
Yes.
when they were in medical situations,
Mhm.
when they were talking with their doctor, or tests were being recommended,
Yes.
or maybe not recommended, but one of the ways that you can sort of get questions to be able to kind of make more informed decisions.
Mhm.
We call it T brains. I did not invent this, but it's something that a lot of doulas use.
Uh-huh.
So it's an acronym, T brains. So the first thing is let's talk, right?
All
Let's sit
right.
down and talk. Let's take a few minutes to talk. What are the
Yes.
benefits?
Mhm.
What are the risks? What are the alternatives? Okay,
Mm.
so what's being suggested? Like, are there any alternatives? So again, for
Mhm.
example, I was in a situation where it's like surgery is being recommended, and it's like, okay, well, let's go through this. What are the alternatives to surgery, right? So what are the
Yes.
alternatives? What is your intuition telling you? This counts
Mhm.
for something, especially with Black and racialized women from
Yes.
groups. It's like, when you got a feeling about a situation or something. So trust your
Absolutely.
gut.
Mhm.
So what is your intuition or your instinct telling you to do in this situation? Do you
Mhm.
need to follow up? Do you need to ask more questions? Do you need to get a second opinion? Like, no, something's not
Yes.
right. Follow your instinct, follow your intuition. What if we do nothing? So again, sometimes procedures I'm speaking more, I guess, maybe, and you see it a lot in birth,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
things are being introduced to try and speed things up. And it's like, well, what if we
Mm.
do nothing? Like, why are we, is there a reason we're trying to speed things up? Or,
Yes.
can we just have a little bit more time?
Yeah.
And so, so yeah. And then the last one is, well, it's supposed to be smile, but I like to
Yeah.
say, speak up, don't be shy. Like, it's like,
Yes.
say something, you know, it's like
Yes.
at the end of the day, when you've had this conversation, you've asked these questions. It's like, if you still feel like there's something you need to say, like, say it, you know, don't,
Yes.
too often we want to, like, but it's like, you can always ask, you can always, you know, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you can always continue that conversation, and you can ask for, you know, again, second opinions. In birth, you know, it's like, sometimes if there's a situation and the nurse is not, you know, you're not vibing with the nurse, it's like, you can ask to
Yeah.
have another nurse, you know. But
Mm.
people don't realize that they have the right to ask for these things. And so
Yes.
again, I encourage you, you know, like, make sure that you're asking and that you're speaking up, because it, you know, it's important. And that advocacy piece, like I say, those are sort of a series of questions that you can ask in a lot of medical situations that will
Yeah.
get you sort of information. So again, let's talk. What are the benefits? What are the risks? What are the alternatives? What is your instinct telling you? What if you do nothing? What if you wait a little bit? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I
So you
think,
gotta talk the thing. You got to what's B again? Talk the
yeah,
thing.
they gotta talk the thing. They gotta. What are the benefits? Okay, like,
Benefits,
why do we want to do this? What are the risks? There's always
risk,
risks. Yeah. What is your?
alter,
What are the alternatives?
alternatives,
What are the alternatives?
intuition,
Intuition and instinct.
do
And then, what if we
nothing,
do nothing? What if we wait a little bit?
and then
And
you
then
speak
smile,
out.
speak up. Yeah, that's right. Speak out. You know, keep asking if you're still feeling unsettled. Yeah.
Wow.
I think in terms of, like, you know, at a larger level here in Canada, we need
Yeah.
to be lobbying and asking, you know, our governments and institutions for disaggregated race data. There is research that's going on for
Yes.
community, in community, by community. We need community to show up and get counted.
Yes.
And trust our researchers, because that's why they're collecting this data, is to help improve health outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, I think a lot of people, when it comes to advocacy, is like just having somebody with you too.
Yes.
Sometimes you can't advocate for yourself in that moment, because, you know, so if you've got a support person, an essential care person, like a friend, a loved one, somebody who can come with you, who knows how you feel, knows about your questions and concerns, and can kind of help guide
Mm-hmm.
or prompt, or just, you know, again, if you're in labor and you're huffing and puffing through contractions, you know,
Yes.
having someone by your side who's able to
Yes.
kind of, again, it's not to say to speak for you, but just who can help, you know, help you in that way.
Yes.
Sometimes when it's us in the moment, we're like kind of overwhelmed by things. So as a doula,
Mm-hmm.
that was something I did. I don't advocate for my clients, but in the moment I can prompt you. Did you want to ask about the benefits and the risks? Did you want to, you know, ask about
Mm-hmm.
this option or that option? I can kind of prompt them. And then it's, so again, when you have somebody in your, you know, in your support network who can kind of be that person, it can really
Yeah,
help. Yeah.
absolutely. So you feel less alone in the
Yes.
process.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, I know that obviously I'm not a medical practitioner in any means. That is out of my scope. Let me say that. Okay. Right. But I know that, you know, often when you um, are pregnant, you are often said to have a birth plan,
Right.
right?
Mm.
So why don't we talk a little bit about that piece? Because sometimes the birth plans go as planned, and then other
Mhm.
times the birth plan
Mhm.
don't go as planned, and there can be a sense of like grief and loss even about that as
Yeah.
well.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, this is one I actually, I'm like, yeah, I got an opinion about this one. Okay,
Yes,
so
chef.
yes, let's talk about birth plans first. We
Okay.
always call them, like, I always call them birth preferences. And I always,
Okay.
yeah, I always preface this.
Yes.
It's like, look, plan makes it sound like, look, this is what's going to happen. It's like, no, no, we work out our birth preferences. And
Mm.
so, you know, when I did childbirth education, and when we did childbirth education in my doula company, We always talk to clients about their preferences in a variety of diverse situations, some of them great, some of them challenging. You need to be thinking about what might happen. It's not about planning your birth. It's about thinking, what are all the things that might happen during my birth? And then planning, if that happens, this is my preference, you know?
Mm.
So
I like that.
thinking about the options that are available to you, you know,
Yeah.
if you need to be induced, thinking about the options that will be available or offered to you if you have to, you know, go on oxytocin or they want to speed up your labor. What are your options in terms of the pain relief that's available at the hospital that you're at? What kind of epidural? Do they have a really heavy epidural? Do they have a really light epidural? You know, sometimes I'd have a client and they'd be like, I want to have like a really light epidural or, you know, one of these walking epidurals. It's just a light epidural. Ladies, don't get too
Yes.
excited. But not every hospital offers that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
again, depending on whether you're birthing in the city, you know, it's like, then we could kind of like let folks know, you know, if that's what you're looking for. Oh, you want to have the tubs? Okay, well, you know, they don't have the tubs here, but they have the birthing tubs here.
Yeah.
You know, so letting folks know what options are available to them depending on where they're birthing, what might happen in certain situations if they go past their due date, you know, all of these different things that can come up at the end, you
Yes.
know, around the birth. And so we
Yes.
go through all of these sort of different scenarios and we talk about like, what are your preferences in each of these?
Yes.
You have to have a cesarean. How do you want it? You know, like, here are some of the options that are available to you, you know, like, what do you want to do in that situation? And sometimes, you know, some women, they've never even thought about having a C-section, about having to have a cesarean birth. It's like, no, I'm having like an unmedicated vaginal birth. And okay, well, that's what you want to have, but it's like, we don't always know how our birth's going to go. And let me tell you about the wisdom of women's bodies. Sometimes a mom's, like a woman's labor is not progressing for a reason. And then she does end up in surgery. And then we end up finding out, oh yeah, it turns out, you know, there was an issue with baby or the cord or something that's why her labor kept slowing down. And so I've seen things like that happen where, you know, there's, you know, a mom who really wanted to have and was all set to have, you know, an unmedicated vaginal birth, but ends up having a different kind of birth. But then there's a wisdom to the reason. There's a wisdom to the body there. The mom's, we're protecting our babies. Like the mom's body is protecting the baby.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, there's a wisdom there, and we, you know, being able to trust that and have confidence in that as well. So, but yeah, preferences, you know, preferences. And again, that way you are equipped. No matter what happens, it's not going to be the first time you've had that conversation, you know?
You're not caught off guard.
You're not caught totally off guard, having to learn all new terms or having to hear all new information and make a decision. It's like, you know, we would talk about a lot of these things beforehand. And so I think preferences is a much better way to look at it.
Yeah. So I think that in itself can also help to reduce anxiety, right? Because when you feel out of control, and you feel like, you know, you either fear the future, or you feel out of control, then that produces more anxious feelings. And I know that based on what I've seen, you can tell me if I'm wrong, right? The birth doula can tell me, but
no, I would totally agree.
Yeah, like anxiety can actually also make it even more difficult in the birthing process.
Oh,
because
sure. No,
you're
we
like,
need you real relaxed to be able to, like we need moms real relaxed going into birth, right? Like we don't
could
want
try.
tense and full of fear or full of anxiety. No, but it's very true. Right?
Yeah.
So creating, you know, a bit more of a sense of security, safety. And again, the understanding that it's like, you know, even in, you know, an undesirable, let's say, situation or something, you know, you're ending up in a situation that you weren't wanting to be in, but it's like you still have options available to help mitigate whatever negative effects, might be there. So again, just thinking about like, if you're going to have cesarean, it's like being able to do that skin to skin with
Yes.
baby, and just having baby on you afterwards to really help, bring on that bond, that milk production and those hormones for breastfeeding that can sometimes be interrupted. Right. So again, we talk about these things, and then people are like, oh, okay. So like, yeah, it's not going to be the end of the world if, there are ways to work with it. Having said that, one of the things I really hate is that sometimes, sorry, I say that,
That's okay.
I do feel strongly about this, because I kind of saw it, enough times where a mom's had a really challenging birth. The baby's here now. She's holding baby in her arms, and like someone on staff will say something like, well, like, I know it didn't go the way you were thinking, but healthy baby, healthy mom, that's all that matters, and you just kind of see the mom like maybe shrink a little bit, It's like, no one is saying they're not thrilled that their baby is here safe and healthy and all of the rest of it, like, of course we are happy that, we're here and baby's here, and it all worked out in the end. But comments like that tend to sort of like negate the, whatever she might have experienced before baby got here. So again, like a challenging labor, pain, comfort, all of these, the emotional and psychological toil,
all of it,
all of it. Right?
Yeah.
And so when we do this sort of like, well, healthy baby, like that's all that matters. Healthy, that's all that matters. And it's like, okay, but like, well, actually that is all that matters. But let's talk about that. Healthy should mean mentally and emotionally and psychologically okay.
The whole person.
It needs to be the whole person. And we need to acknowledge the entire experience that a mom, or that a parent has had. And again, I want to extend this to partners and fathers as well. It's like, if they just watched, and then it's like a nail biting run to the OR for a cesarean birth that was like, again, unexpected, maybe baby's heartbeat was dropping, there can be real fear. And in these situations, and then we kind of like, oh, but the baby's here now, we're not going to talk about it again.
Absolutely.
Again, we need to talk about those things. Yes, it didn't go according to your plans. Maybe you got some of your preferences, maybe you didn't. But it's like, it's okay to have whatever feelings you have about your birth, mama. It's like, you are allowed to have those feelings. And we need to make sure, like, we need to have more safe spaces where moms can kind of have those feelings that hold it, holding it both in your hands, like both emotions. It's like, yes, of course I'm true, but I'm also, and so, I that was something that I saw a lot in hospitals and at different births, where it's like, okay, it was dicey there for a second, but now that the moment is past, we've just like, okay, well, everything's fine now. And we don't really acknowledge or sit with the mom for a minute, and so as a doula, that was something that, I did, I felt like I recognized that needed to be done. It's like, you just sit with the mom for a minute, and she maybe gets a little teary, and it's like, I know this didn't go the way you thought it was going to go. And she's like, and it's like, it's okay, and it's like, you just give them a minute to like be able to be sad about that, right? This is a huge transition. This is a huge time of change in our life. It's a huge coming of age moment for a lot of us. And, if it doesn't the way that you were hoping, and, maybe there are health repercussions that are going to be echoing into the future because of it. Like, like we can take a minute. It's important to take a minute and recognize like these warrior women, right?
Yes.
Like these warrior mamas, like, I mean, the culture, like in the past, a lot of cultures equated childbirth with like warrior and being, this is how women, risked their
Yeah.
lives for the safety and the continuation of the community. And so it's like
Yes.
these we need to honor that, and take that moment when
Yeah.
these warrior women come in off the field, when they come back, and it's like to welcome them,
Yes.
and when in with arms wide open, and the acknowledgement that there
100%.
was a struggle and a sacrifice or a loss, or it was
Yeah.
hard work. It's not called labor for nothing. And no
Girl.
matter how your baby came here, no matter what your journey is, we're all warriors in this. Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
That warrior
Yeah.
spirit, our bravery and courage. We have to honor that.
Mhm. I love that you talked about that warrior spirit, because then when you think about some people after the war experience trauma and they need to heal
Hmm.
from that trauma.
That's
Some,
right.
an extension of that is the PTSD, right?
Yeah.
Some people just, it's an emotional roller coaster, and it's, the body that is trying to heal.
To
The
heal. And I think
emotions
the
are
body
trying
like
to heal.
processing it, right? It's like
Absolutely.
we went through it mentally, but then also like the body trying to heal after
Yeah.
birth, like even a sort of textbook vaginal birth. It's like, ugh, the body needs to recover after that. So there's this, yeah,
Yeah.
there's this, this vulnerability, but this strength, and yeah, it makes sense. The PTSD, like you say. And
Mhm.
again, access to mental health support is not
Yeah.
uniform across the way. So again, depending
Mhm.
on where you are located, if you are trying to find culturally relevant care, if you are
Mhm.
trying to find, perinatal specific care,
Yes.
know that it can be really challenging because of the intersections with our like our LGBTQ
Mm.
folks, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So when you're looking at
Yes.
gender and parenting and all of these different things,
Mhm.
so having access to this care, we know that Black women are
Mhm.
also, more likely to suffer
Yes.
from perinatal mood issues, but then we're also
Yeah.
way less likely to seek help. Um,
Yeah. That is so
so
true.
so yeah, it's there's definitely like a gap there, and
Mhm.
I think peer support can be like really great for folks.
Yeah.
It can be something that's sort of like a bit of a stopgap, like to. But at the end
Mm.
of the day, it's like sometimes you need to speak to a medical health professional. And
100.
again, I think that this is one of those situations where, like I wish there was some kind of universal coverage or something, where
Yeah.
have at least a few sessions after birth, if you need it, no matter what kind of birth you've had, if you feel like
Yeah.
you need it,
Yeah.
because again, like your birth is like our
Mhm.
perceptions of our birth. It's like somebody else might be like, oh, well, you had it easy or you had a really fast birth. But it's like that same woman might be traumatized because she had such a precipitous birth. She had a very
Yeah.
fast birth. And so,
Yeah.
it can
Mhm.
be really scary, right? And so,
Yes.
like, depending on, like, I don't think it's something like, oh, if you've had a loss, you can get mental health support. It's like, no, if you feel like you need it, you're going through a major transition. And
Yeah.
anyone who feels like they need it should be able to access access mental health supports in a timely fashion,
Yeah.
right? Not a 6-month wait list. So, okay, we'll get their event. It's like, no, like these women and
Mhm.
these families need this support now. I mean, anybody who's seeking mental health support needs it when they need it. But like, again,
Yeah.
it's not enough to be like, oh, we'll put you on a wait list. It's like, we need to have systems in place to
Yes.
support these families right away and these moms right away.
100%. And I know that we're talking about just the birth process, but again, also this, like, the nursing can be very hard and challenging for a lot of moms, right?
Mhm.
Who may want to nurse. Some just they want to bottle feed, some they want to nurse, and it's difficult for them to produce the milk. And that could also provide another layer of the shame and
Mm.
guilt and stuff like that.
Yeah, feeding is another big one that there's a lot of shame and guilt around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be really complex. You might be
Mhm.
getting pressured either to breastfeed or getting pressured to stop breastfeeding. So again,
Yeah.
situations vary.
Mhm.
I've seen it from both sides.
Mhm.
There's a lot of pressure put on moms, even by themselves, right, to be able to breastfeed. I will say, I know something that I felt because I struggled with breastfeeding.
Mm.
This thing, it's the most natural thing in the world. It's the most natural thing in the world. In my
Mhm.
experience, and what I used to tell my clients, it is a
Mhm.
learned skill. We do,
Mhm.
like we're not, many of us have not grown up just seeing breastfeeding in our family home or, when we were kids.
Mm.
There's a lot of us that didn't see breastfeeding happening. So
Yes,
we weren't able to learn about it and just be around it in that way. And so
absolutely.
it's like for many women, this is literally the very first time like anything's happened or that they've seen breastfeeding is when they start to learn about it this first time. So give
Yes.
yourself time to learn and giving yourself time to learn and that it, whatever your goals are, like this
Yeah.
is your body and your baby and it's a relationship and
Yeah.
it's okay to do what's right for you and your baby. The only thing baby needs more than breast milk is, a mentally stable, okay mom, like happy mom.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so bonding, still happens with chest feeding, bonding, all of that, all of those good hormones still happen with the skin to skin and all of that. And so, I
Mhm.
think that, I would like to see the conversation about breastfeeding kind of open up a little bit more and not
Yeah.
maybe be so restrictive. I'd like to be a little bit more
Mhm.
inclusive so that women, no matter what their breastfeeding goals, no matter how short term or long term they are, can be
Yes,
and supported.
absolutely, absolutely. Because again, it is again another thing that really does impact like someone emotionally,
Oh, mental
right?
health is, yeah, I would say it's one of the
Yeah.
key things that sleep and the breastfeeding are the two things, just again, anecdotally, but in my experience
Yeah.
that that affected my clients' mental health the most
Mhm.
in those, especially in that early postpartum period, that first month or two was sleep.
Yes.
Well, sleep or the lack of sleep
Yeah.
and how their feeding situation was going with baby. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like if it wasn't going well, it always seemed, it always has an impact on mental health, so mom's mental health. So important
Absolutely.
to again look at those things holistically when we're
Mm.
supporting moms or giving lactation advice and that kind of thing. I feel like we need to weigh mom's mental health too.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Wow. Well, if you could leave one last gem for the Love Bay family, what would you leave? What would you leave? What would you drop for those moms or moms to be that are listening tonight?
Mm. I think I would just say I'll go back to my personal story, I guess, and just speak
Mhm.
personally that, pregnancy, all the changes, the transition to motherhood, to parenthood. Um, and, if you are someone who's struggled with fertility or had a loss, it's something that you do heal from. I would say
Mhm.
you have to work at healing it. Like it's not going to
Yeah.
heal just on its own. I did a lot of homework,
Yeah.
I did do a lot of work personally, and then also with a therapist as well
Yes. Yes.
for a bit of time as well.
Mhm.
But I would say that, yeah, it's like that healing is possible. And I feel like now the work that I do in Black maternal health with the Canadian Women of Color Leadership
Mhm.
Network, being able to bring my experiences, to use my voice, to amplify and highlight issues
Mhm.
has also been part of my healing. As
Mhm.
well as being able to hear other women's stories, whether it was my clients talking about their experiences or again the women that I talk to now in the work, in the webinars that we're doing, in the conversations that we're having in community. It makes you feel less alone.
Yeah.
Gives you an opportunity to tell your story, which is healing. Like it gets easier. It feels good sometimes. I don't know, it sounds strange, but to talk about it out loud, it's like I get to acknowledge this thing that happened to me that I like never
Yeah,
really get to talk about, like, and it had such an impact on me. But
absolutely.
so, connect with others. There are networks and resources out there. Felicia, I know that you're a wonderful care provider.
Thank
There
you.
are resources out there. You don't have
Yeah,
to be silent and sit in and suffer through silent grief alone. Like there are
yeah,
others who are also who also have the silent grief, and
yeah.
we get together and we talk about it and we acknowledge it. It's a way of honoring our babies, our losses, our loved ones, and
Yeah.
a way of sort of like healing and releasing. Especially, I think, when it comes to pregnancy, because again, these are things that literally happened within our bodies, and
Yeah.
we need to process that. We can't hold on to that forever. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, being able to talk and connect with folks. And so, yeah, I encourage to say that it's not that it goes away, but it softens, I guess.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
that, it softens with time, and
Yeah,
you find ways to channel that love,
yeah.
that energy, yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. So beautifully said, Danielle. So beautifully said. As we come to the end of tonight's conversation, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something, that there is a kind of strength that doesn't always get named. The strength it takes to carry life, the strength it takes to grieve, and the strength it takes to hold both at the same time. Tonight reminded us that healing isn't always about moving on. Sometimes it looks like remembering, honoring, and allowing space for all parts of the experience to exist at the same time. I want to thank you, Danielle James, for your honesty, your compassion, and the incredible work you continue to do in supporting families, communities, and all of that work you're doing in Black maternal health. And to everyone listening tonight, especially those who have experienced loss, transition, or complex journeys into parenthood, you are not alone. Your story matters, and your experience deserves space. And before we close, I want to invite you back for next week's Barbershop Tuesday episode. The title is Can Men Be Victims? Let's talk about it. I'll be joined by the Barbershop Tuesday panel as we step into a powerful and necessary conversation looking at trauma and survivorship in men's lives. We'll be unpacking how trauma shows up, how silence and stigma keep it hidden, and how expectations around masculinity can make it difficult for men to be seen, supported, or even recognize their own experiences as trauma. It's going to be real, it's going to be honest, and deeply important. So make sure you join us, same time, same place. Thank you for being here with us tonight on the Mental Health Hour on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. Again, I'm your host, Felicia Fishoff, registered psychotherapist and founder of Rooted in Resilience Psychotherapy and Wellness. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next week. Peace out.